everyone. Welcome to Meeple Talk. Once again, I am Stephanie.
And I'm Adam.
Week after week with the same. Okay,
yeah,
so this
the same people. Same two people.
Fresh new game. So we've got Imhotep. So some of you may have seen it around. It's one of those contenders for the Spiel des Jahres. It is a relatively new game available in stores as of right now. 2 to 4 players. It's a shorter game, roughly, I don't know, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes.
40 minutes on the box. You were a little over, a little under.
I know, exactly. But what you can see here, it's a pyramid, well, I would say more just a general Egyptian theme. It's a builder game, so we all take on the roles of builders. And what we want to do, we are in charge of creating different types of monuments. So you've got your pyramids that you're going to be building
Actual
on.
Pyramids. That's actual pyramids. Score for that.
Okay. You've got temples, burial chambers, and obelisks. Everyone is competing to build on these same structures, but they're going to have different kind of rewards and bonuses along the way. You also have on the Master Market as well, if you can see that. So you have a series of cards that might, as you build, give you certain bonuses that you might help build or score immediately, or when it comes to collections that you're going to get for end of game scoring, you're also going to do that as well. If we just look at the main board, there's everyone has their quarry. So these represent your building blocks, your boulders.
Big giant rocks that you're going to use to build your monuments.
Everyone's got your immediate reserve here. So they're in a way like the log rolling sleds that you actually use to try to transport those goods. You've got a series of boats that are eventually going to ship your boulders to the actual building sites and then the actual sites themselves. So in just a general example of how a turn would actually go. You always have 3 options of what you're going to do. You're either going to get more stones because you have to mine that quarry. You can either then get those stones and plant them on an actual ship. I guess little boat. And then, or you can actually take the boat and sail to a specific building site. Every round you have, depending on the size of players, you have these different type of round cards. And each one of them is going to be different. It's going to show you which size of boat are available for a particular round. So you're going to have some larger ones, combinations of either large boat dominant size or small boat dominant size. And so those are going to change what might be available as your shipping capacity. Eventually, when you build, your structures are starting to come alive because it's more of a tier-based building, so you're going to have your ground levels and coming up, and you're going to see your monuments, I guess, come to life. So that's generally the gist.
Yeah, and so I guess we move into how the game would work from turn to turn. So there are a total of 6 rounds. And I put up 3 fingers. Times 2. So,
good job.
That's right. So on each round, you'll pull one of these cards, and you'll find out which boats are going to be empty.
Available,
empty and ready to be filled. So at the beginning of each round, they're all empty.
Side,
yeah, that's
waiting to load.
And people will start with, actually, I don't know how many. You start with 3, do you?
Yep, on your actual...
You start with 3 on the first round, but after that, or however many you have on your sled when the next round begins, that's how many you start with on the next round.
Point of information. So actually, on your starting turn order, depending on who's first, second, third, or fourth to move, that'll determine how many you start with.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So I think the first person gets 2, the second person gets 3, and so on and so forth. That's to balance the game out.
Yeah.
So on your turn, as Stephanie mentioned, you have 3 options. You can get the stones, you can put one on a ship, or a boat, whatever you want to call it, and you can move the ship without having put anything else on. And then all of those blocks will then come off, and wherever they're supposed to go, that's where they'll go. And you'll score more or less points depending on the order in which it come off the ship. So for example, on my turn, I might say, well, I have a lot of blocks. I don't need any more blocks. I might put it on this ship, hoping that now I'm going to be first because that ship only has 1 space. Now, the way the ships launch is, for example, this one has 4 spaces. You can launch any ship if it has all of the spaces filled or all but 1's filled. So if there's 3 blocks here, I could say, I don't want to put another one on. I'm just going to launch it. And then those blocks will come off. And once all 4 ships are launched on that particular round, then the round is over, and then you move to the next round. You flip another card, you get 4 new boats that are empty, and you go again. And so the strategy of the game is to put the blocks on in particular order, and then try to launch the ships in a particular place that's to your advantage. Because depending on the monument, there are certain spaces that will be more or less valuable. For example, on the pyramid, there's 9 spaces on the first level, and they all have numbers from 1 to 3, and the middle one has a 4, right? But they're all going to unload in a particular order in columns from top to bottom. So the 5th block that comes off will get 4 points from the pyramid. The second block will only get 1. So when you're thinking about launching a ship, you'll say, okay, I have a block in the second position. If I put it there, it's going to end up there. I'm going to get so many points. Then maybe that's not a good option.
The thing is, too.
So you may want to launch it somewhere else.
And
so
the thing is,
that's
too,
the strategy of the
when
game.
we talk about being in the second position, we don't just mean someone just put that there and then you happen to go second, you want to be there. You could, if it was on your turn, go there right away. Yes,
or you can put it at the end, right? So then that determines your order, right?
You might hope that by the time, if that ship happens to go where you want it to go, that you're perfectly in position to take that advantageous spot. It might not always happen, because sometimes people can decide to ship your ship to somewhere else that you didn't plan to go. Or if, let's say, for example, only these, well, let's say...
It would need a third one,
Yeah, you need a third. Let's say they don't wait until it's full and they ship it right away. With that gap, you're still going to take third position, and that might be, not where you wanted to go.
Yeah, and maybe you wanted to be in 4th position, but nobody went in the 4th position. So, that's the basic gist of the game. There's different, scoring possibilities. Like for the pyramid, we'll score immediately when those blocks come off, depending on where they land. The temple also will score at the end of the round, and then the burial chamber and the obelisk will score at the end of the game. So now you're thinking long term when you're setting up the burial or the obelisks. And also keep in mind one last thing about the game. So this is an A side. On the B side, there's another way of scoring the obelisks, and all of these cards have a B side. So. And the first time you play the game, you may use all of the A sides, but after that, you may want to flip it to all the B sides and try those out, which is what we did, and it was really cool. They're not terribly more advanced or more difficult. They score
just
differently.
A different focus.
So yeah, we found that there's a combination of A's and B's that we particularly liked. And you can certainly do that, or when you begin the game, you might say, okay, we're just going to randomly select A's and B's, flip them over, and find out how the game turns out. So that makes the game a lot more interesting. It's not always the same game over and over again. So it's a lot of variety in that sense. And I don't know if we mentioned the cards, but you have these 4 monument places where you can land, but you can also land on the card spot, and that's how you get cards. So those blocks will come off, and the first block will get first choice at a card. Second block will get second choice. And the cards include instants, the red instant cards, where actions happen immediately. For example, place 1 stone from the quarry on to the obelisk, right? Which is nice.
And some may reserve for it later, so that you can take, and these are the blue ones you can use at any time. So this one says, for your action, you can sail 1 ship, and also you can decide for yourself which order you unload those stones.
Yes.
So sometimes they give you building advantages that way.
And that's useful, because normally you don't know the order, right? And then there's the green cards, which are basically collection bonuses. You get 1 point for each stone, for each 3 stones in a pyramid. The purple cards, the more cards you have, the more points you score. So they're kind of like their own collection bonus. So you have these 4 cards, 4 different kinds of cards. And after 6 rounds, you score you scored all your points for 6 rounds over. And then these 2 are end of game monuments, as I mentioned, the burial chamber and the obelisk. You'll score those points. You'll score all the cards. And whoever wins has the most points, or whoever has the most points wins. Exactly. Depending on how you like to think about it. So,
and the thing is, when we talked about the A side and B side, this adds an extra level of customizability, because not every, for example, the obelisk, at first, the A side is an end of scoring focus, I guess you could say, but the B side is immediate. And so each one of these has these different effects. Some of them are more immediate, some are long-term. So you can actually decide and change the nature of the game. Do you want a mixed balance? Because just the A's or just the B's, they do balance out short-term and long-term goals. But you can also decide for yourself if you want just immediate scoring game or a long-term scoring game, and you can customize it to suit your preference. But even if you want to go to the traditional A's and B's, they're good. And so some of them, just depending on your preference, you can just, play with it around. And I think it's kind of neat, too, is that, in a way, they almost build two different kinds of games into one. Because without the market, you could simply describe this building part of the game as almost like a math game. It's really just placement, order, pattern recognition, things like that. And so if you are a puzzle person, if you like patterns and things like that, this is a really interesting game for that, because it really appeals to that side, and then the market just kind of adds that extra layer of, it just adds a different dimension to it when it comes to things like extra bonuses. If you're the type of person who likes to do the surprise attack at the end, kind of, it kind of gives you that advantage in that way as well.
If you ignore the cards, you're definitely in trouble in this game, because the cards can be very powerful. Yes. But at that same time, it's not a matter of luck, right? You can launch the ship and determine the order of when you get those cards, and you see all the cards. There's a variant where two cards are turned down and you can't see them. But anyway, so and overall,
it could be cooperative and competitive at the same time, because if you recognize the pattern that someone is trying to go after, and it also happens to be to your advantage, you can have these unspoken kind of, all right, we know where this is going to go.
You help me, sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. But of course, the final scoring, whoever scores highest wins. So it's still going to be a competitive game in the end. So you can change that level of competitiveness versus cooperation. Yeah. And it's neat. It's a neat theme. The illustrations. It's not heavily designed, heavily illustrated, but for that simplicity, I mean, simple square, simple design and stuff like that, the charm of the game design really comes through that 3D nature that as you build, this board really is coming to life in that sense.
It's almost kind of amazing that they just took colored blocks and made it into a cool game. So that's what I really like about it. I like the different colors. I think the colors are perfect for the theme. I think
it really suits it.
I think the art of the board and the art of the game itself, and the idea that you're launching boats. I like the little boats.
It is cool.
I think they did a really good job with the theme, and it's definitely very thematic. And it's also a short game. It's really easy to learn. Once we played it the first time, we didn't have to refer to the rules the second time. We were just like, go, and it's just, so I think it's a very charming little game. I would almost call it a micro game because it's so short. And with fewer players, we played to 4 players. But with 2 or 3 players, it would be a pretty short game.
Yeah, but it's the kind
definitely
of game,
filler-like.
Yeah, but even though it's filler-like, it's not the one that you just think, I've played it once, I don't really feel like doing it again. I want to do it again.
Yeah, it's definitely a filler game that has some legs, because there's a lot of different little strategies. There's a lot of things to think about, which I like. I like an LN game that is easy to learn, is simple, but it has a lot of depth.
Yeah.
Similar to Isle of Skye, I think of Isle of Skye as well, because it's also a very simple game that has a lot of interesting depth. So, it's not as exciting and wow like Camel Up, which is another kind of similar.
It still has its pleasurable elements, and that's what I like about it.
I would say it's a more relaxed strategy game.
Exactly. So I would say go and check it out. Once again, it's Imhotep.
Yes.
Available now. So thank you so much for watching. We're going to see you next time.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.